American University in Bulgaria.
Good evening and welcome to our first Tuesday evening event for this spring semester 2014. I would normally say that if it's Tuesday it's politics, but tonight is a double shared event and sponsored by both the Department of Journalism, Mass Communication and Politics and European Studies. It's an event that is going to follow the format you know, so you're going to have a presentation from the speaker and then we'll open for questions. The more dynamic we have from the room, the more the entertainment that we're going to have. Though I'm sure that we're lucky tonight because we have a speaker that can provide entertainment in and of himself. It's always easy to introduce someone who has a high profile already and is well known to the audience. Generally, you make big introduction and you recite somebody's CV when you don't have much to say. So you compensate. This is not the case here. Voiko Vasilev is a war journalist, has interviewed almost everyone who's anyone from Tony Blair to Umberto Eco, and he has graced the Bulgarian national television channel for the past 10 years as the host of the talk show Panorama. I remember a few years ago a former head of the journalism department, Arnold van Linden, when he was asked to introduce Voiko Vasilev to an international audience, he said, well, imagine that this is the Bulgarian Amanpour. So I'm just gonna, use or plagiarize, then Arnold is not here, but he won't mind. I would say that Voiko Vasilev was a regular presence for a while on campus, but the last time he visited the campus was 6 years ago, so we welcome him back. And may I say, Voiko, it's been too long. Welcome, give a warm welcome to Voiko Vasilev.
Thank you very much. I enjoy coming to this campus, really. So let me make my favorite promise. I made it 6 years ago, I'll make it now. Like Henry VIII, like he said to every one of his 6 wives, I won't keep you too long. So my intention is to have really a dialogue. And my intention is not to stay ex cathedra here and to teach you, but to tell about my mistakes, my own mistakes, in order for you not to repeat it. The problem of journalism today, not only in Bulgaria, but generally, is that journalists seldom talk about their mistakes. They behave like politicians, as if like some kind of very special personalities. They don't talk about their mistakes. They don't admit them. They don't even say that they make mistakes. So this is, I think, a problem, especially in Bulgaria, but in the world as a whole. So, mistake number 1. How do we think media? When I was your age, I thought that the media is in a position to manipulate by itself. That when you go there as a decent person and as a person who loves the truth, then you can change it. Then you will be something better. You can do things for yourself. Now, for sometimes I realized that you can be manipulated by your own. And for explaining that, let me tell you a story. You will also see part of this story. So, the year was 1998. The place was Kosovo. At that time, there was this war between the KLA, the Kosovo Liberation Army, and the Serbian Special Police in the mountains of Kosovo. So we were to both places, but also with that, we had another particular dirty event, this was blowing up of cafes down Pristina. This was 98. Also, it continued. It's for sometimes in the beginning of 1999. So today they blow a Serbian cafe. Next time they blow an Albanian one. And journalists were staying at that time in a hotel which was called Grand at that time. I think it still exists in downtown Pristina. So we were there. We were centered there. Somebody calls. The next cafe is there, and you go there and see what's happening. So we received such a call in one day. Later you will see the pictures. And it was on the center street of Pristina. For those who are from Pristina, they know it was called then Vidovdanska Street. Now it's called, I think, Mother Teresa. And the picture was horrible. There was one decomposed body and a girl. The girl was, excuse me for saying, but beautiful in its death. We were shocked. You will see the pictures right now. But we were staying, they call it the dogs of war, journalists who have had years of experience. They were staying, facing this place. And yes, we were shocked. You will see the pictures. The blood was literally on the street, in literally something like a river. And of course, you have to forget all these things and do your job. And the first thing you have to know is, what do we have? We don't know the numbers, we don't know the names. We have a decomposed body and a girl. How old is a girl? We, with my cameraman, we said 14, 15 years. Reuters said 13 years. The gentleman next to me was a Japanese. They also had very good judgment, excellent journalists. They had 12. And we wrote down and we called our prehistoric mobile phones to send to our station this news. And when we came back to a hotel, then, of course, nobody said whether it's Serbian or Albanian. When we back to the hotel, we knew the truth. The girl was 18. Nobody of us has made a sane and fair judgment. Why? Because of whom? After that, I spoke to conspiracy theorists all around the place. Serbians, they said, the Serbian theory was, because the victim is Albanian, you said that she is younger in order to criticize the Serbian side. The Albanian said, you don't have a fair judgment on Albanian affairs, so you did not do your job. You said, you made a bad judgment, but I knew the truth. The truth was that we were mistaken by our own eyes. Our own eyes have been lying to us. Why? Because the picture, the eye, is paradoxically not the most objective thing, but the most subjective, ladies and gentlemen. Let me try to prove this paradoxal point. But first of all, let's see the girl.
Мръсната война на кафенетата, който има слаби нерви да не гледа. Месеци наред в Прищина гърмяха албански и сръбски заведения. Поредната бомба избухна на тогавашната Видовденска улица, сега Майка Тереза. И ние видяхме истинска река от кръв пред останките на мъж и девойка. Тя се казваше Вльора Хумоли и загина на 18, за да може едната страна да обвини другата за нещо си. Преговорите в Рамбуе тъкмо започваха. Не, че сърби и албанци въобще преговаряха, седяха в различни стаи, между тях сновяха посредници.
It's okay. Why were we mistaken? because we were right on the scene. The blood, you've seen the blood. The girl, you've seen the girl. And when you are shocked by yourself, you tend to make this girl younger, to make her suffering greater, to make her look more and more innocent. What is lying to you? Your own eyes, your own stereotypes, your own judgment. Paradoxically, if we have made the other way around, if we have stayed in the hotel and wait for the official announcement, we would have been closer to truth as going to the place where this atrocity was done. Because we would have been closer to the truth if we have just stayed in the hotel waiting for the official announcement. Why I'm making this point, ladies and gentlemen? Why am I talking about my own mistake? Because the television picture is the most dangerous thing in the world. The most dangerous thing in journalism. Because the viewer cannot analyze this picture like you do now, because he watches it or she watches it just for a second, and everything what is in this picture goes to him immediately without any barrier. What do you make out of this picture? You think maybe this girl is Albanian, presumably killed by Serbs, so Serbs are bad people. Is it a fair judgment? No. You don't know how this girl was killed, or you don't think that all the Serbs are villains, even if she was killed by Serbs. But why if she was killed by Albanians for other reason, other than the war, for some other reason? What if the truth is anywhere else? But you don't know the truth by the bottom of it. You have only this picture, and this picture is sticky. This picture is sticky, and it hurts. And this is your manipulation you're doing by your own hands, because you cannot resist the picture, and the viewer cannot resist the picture, and you know, you viewer may take the wrong message. So let me put this point to the extreme. If we come back to Kosovo, Kosovo 99, 1 year later, you remember the bombing. Maybe you don't remember, of course, you're so young, but you have heard about that bombing of Belgrade, war in Kosovo, huge thing which was called one of the media wars. What do I have as a journalist in Bulgaria? I have pictures. I have the pictures of Slobodan Milosevic, officially the Serbian position. This picture shows a house bombed and ruined. And the one who produces the picture says, this is a school. And this school is bombed by NATO, so NATO are villains. But I have seen with my own eyes in Belgrade that in some schools there were anti-aircraft guns and the kids were out of the schools. So how about this? So you have one propaganda, pictures produced by Milosevic. Second, you have pictures produced by NATO. Well, if you're on the NATO side, you would say this is good. These pictures are good because NATO is good. But can we trust this? These pictures show a very precise shot on a tank. You don't see who is in the tank, who is dying, but also you know that there were no so many precise shots because the Chinese embassy was bombed and they claimed it was by mistake. So it was not very precise. So if the picture produced by NATO of a precise shot as a metaphor of the war also is a propaganda, because you have one precise shot, and you know there are many unprecise shots, which are, of course, not given by NATO. So you have two. Source 2. 3 propaganda. Source 2. Now you have the most trickiest source. Albanian refugees in Macedonia and Albania. You would say, yes, they say their own stories about that. But this is nevertheless, you can trust, you can check these stories. But this is also the stories of the one side. Can you doubt as a journalist? You should doubt. You should doubt if somebody tells you and you cannot check it. So this is a third source of picture, which shows refugees camps, poor refugees, and other things. The problem was that the actual scene of everything was closed. Kosovo was closed for journalists, especially only those who were at that time of the bombing could have stayed. If I was there on this particular march, I could have stayed, but I was not there, so I cannot go in. There were journalists there who rarely came out, but nevertheless there were several colleagues there who stayed. But can they check on the spot what's happening? No. They are restricted by the army. They cannot move freely. They are shown what they have seen. What did we have? So we have one propaganda source, second propaganda source, third propaganda source. 3 kinds of pictures. You can call them propaganda, you can call them half lies, but you can call them plain lies. If you doubt, you cannot check them. So we were very comfortable in Bulgaria to put this picture, then the other picture, the other side, then the third side. And we say, here is what Milosevic shows, here is what NATO shows, here is what we see from the refugees in Albania and Macedonia. So now my question is, could we have 3 lies and to have one truth out of them? Could we square 3 propaganda messages, pictures? Because the picture is the most objective thing. And to make the truth by comparing 3 propaganda pictures which you don't have your influence on. Can we? I doubt. And if you think a little bit, you doubt. So this is the problems, ladies and gentlemen, we have with pictures. What can we do about that? First of all, paradoxically, if pictures are so subjective, they should be objective, but they are subjective. Paradoxically, opinions could be objective if we have more of them. Think about that. It's controversial to everything you have ever heard. Opinions could be more objective than pictures. Why? If you have more of them. For example, if you look for inner dissidents, I have looked for one of them, a Serbian intellectual who told me we should excuse ourselves to the Albanians and say, Albanians, please excuse us for everything which was done in the name of the Serbian nation. He stays in Belgrade, but he has a dissident opinion towards the official line. This is something interesting. Now you have, it's a very subjective, because it's an opinion, but it's much more objective than a manipulated picture. Or you can look at dissident also, a dissident source on the Albanian side. Of course, if you check why he's talking about that. So you can counterbalance, you can counterbalance subjectivity of pictures with objectivity of opinions if there are many, if they can clash, if they can discuss. Second, to use technology. We can use technology. 98, 99, we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have so much highly developed internet connections. Now we have smartphones, and everyone on the spot could have filmed that and showed it. But again, if there's a proof, if we have checked this source and we know that what we are seeing on this picture is the truth. But one thing which doesn't depend on technology and everything is our own doubt, ladies and gentlemen. Our own doubt. Our journalist instinct is, when we have a great picture, to rush with this picture in the newsroom. But our fair instinct of people who enjoy themselves being much more persons than journalists is to check our own picture before rushing there, to doubt our own picture, to go to check it if it's not our own, to say, I mean, what is in this picture which could make people think wrong? What is it in this picture which could make people make opinions, bad opinions? Should we explain our own picture? This is what I tried, by the way, with the girl. Of course, we can explain it, to say, first of all, those who are, please be aware this is emotional picture. We will see blood. Secondly, you can say, this picture is not, you don't have to think out of this picture that only this cafe was burned and only this victim was an Albanian. No, there are also Serb victims. They're almost even. So you can, I'm using this term, you can cool your own picture. Although the journalist instinct tells you to warm it up, no, I think it's rather good to cool it, because we have to be closer to the truth, and the truth includes our own doubt. Let me show you that pictures could be also very beautiful and can say many things which nobody can say with words. Let me give you another example.
Историческите книги ще напишат
This is
само
George Balašević,
в края
a
на 20
Serbian.
век Сърбия имаше диктатор, режим,
He has a song
промени. За
about
нас обаче
Kosovo.
това е животът. Ние знаем всяко име, всеки детайл. Но не всички хора са за историята. Някои е по-добре да ги забравим, отколкото да ги поменуваме.
Now, see these pictures.
Връщали при тях детайлите, съдбите, малките хора в Косово, премеждията на Лирак, нещастието на Сефер, изчезването на Драган, смъртта на Агани, къщата на Жика. И съседите, които си причиниха всичко това. Защо?
I sve po zakonu, zato sam prvi, ne bi bilo ove krvi, da je bilo sve po zakonu.
Разплата, плячка, митове, политици, използващи митовете. Май няма рационален отговор за гадката на воюващите комшии. Те са изгубени. Изгубени едни от други, изгубени във времето, в огледалния свят на омразата, в който никога няма да си простят. Дано времето да лекува, а Европа да пази и плаща, казваме на тръгване от Косово. Земята на изгубените комшии.
Оптимизмът е тук.
Now pay attention. See this lady. And now, watch this picture now. Watch it carefully. Now, it's amazing, isn't it? It's almost like a movie. But nobody has spoken to this tank to come out of this place right now. Nobody has told this person to walk like that, alone on the road, and suddenly the tank appears, and suddenly the tank stays there. You know, it's a geniality of everyday life. It's a genius, not because, by the way, this picture have been studied in Bulgarian, of my cameraman, Hrisi Danev, has been studied in Bulgarian Film Academy. Like the way, he's concentrated on the person. So the person goes alone. The person goes alone in this pastoral, you see, place. Suddenly the tank appears. The tank moves. They go. He says hello to the tank. And he goes after that. The picture goes on. So now you have the other way around. Is this picture an illusion? Is this picture a manipulation? No, it's just a beautiful piece of life. It's just something which shows how a metaphor, a metaphor, can explain almost everything. He's alone. Suddenly in his life appears the war. The war is there. Excuse me for explaining metaphors. We have poets here, So then we have somebody waving from the tank, and the person there, and the war, and the person with a beautiful composition. I think it's a beautiful picture, and the life gives it to you. But everybody from you who will be in television should know that the cameraman is the most important person in television. Your own task as a journalist is to tell what his own eyes have seen. This is a very modest task compared to what the cameraman is really. But you see, if you have this, so it shows how potent a picture can be. But our task is to explain this picture. If it's needed to cool it up, paradoxically to manipulate it in order to avoid manipulation. And this, of course, depends on you. What I have done is, when I started, I was, to tell you the truth, I was 24 when I entered Sarajevo for the first time in '94. It was the middle of the war. And believe me, I was, on your age, and I was very much on the wrong track. I thought war is something heroic. We have been reading Hemingway for years. So war is heroic. You go there, they shot on you. You hide, they shoot. Love affairs, of course, things like that. Martha Gellhorn. Beautiful women appearing out of the trenches. No, war is not like that. War is not like that. And my initial urge to present myself in the middle of the war actually vanished on the second, on the third day. Because you see that the war is about people and about their stories. Of course, you cannot have the absolute truth. But at least, you can tackle and you can go against stereotypes. And this is what I have done in my life, and this is something which I think it could be discussed, it could be criticized, but I think it should be put fairly. To have both sides with their maximum strength in a drama between themselves. To have, if you have in Bosnia the conflict between Bosniaks and Serbs, to have a great Serbian story and a great Bosnian story, and let both stories talk. Of course, in Bulgaria, you can tackle all kind of prejudice. We have prejudice towards all our neighbors. We have fought historically with Serbs, so we have prejudice against Serbs. We have fought, majority is Christian, so we have prejudice against Muslims. So let's show to these people who have prejudice that you can have an excellent story, a tragic story, a great story of somebody whom you are predestined to hate. And people then react. On the first time, they see a very nice Serb, they say, oh, the Serbs are good. But then they see a very nice Bosniak, and they say, oh, the Bosniaks are right. I prefer this very much to one-sided documentaries and one-sided reports who think or pretend that only one side exists. But then you will ask me, again, there are two propagandas. Again, there are two ways. You are making this propaganda on yourself. Yes, I am vulnerable to this criticism. But I don't believe that the task of the reporter is to say the ultimate truth. Yes, his task is to go after the truth, to explore it, to find it. But I hate those who say, I have said everything, it's finished, it's what I say, it's that. Especially when you talk about the conflict. Let me show you, for example, one of the things I did not have intentionally planned. You cannot plan this kind of thing. It's again from Kosovo. It was also a coincidence that we filmed two mothers, Albanian mother and a Serbian mother, on the graves of their children. Again, this was not planned. This was not a stage. And you will see now that the Serbian mother and the Albanian mother, they cry in the same way. A banal truth, but the truth which we very much tend to forget when there's a conflict.
Sine moj, kako će majka sine da se odvoji od tebe? Majka se odvojila evo godinu dana, ali od tvoje kosti, sine. Ova pesma nema kraja, sine.
Sorry for that. I know it's hard, but this is it. And yes, this war has somebody who is responsible for that. But to have the message of the war, to have the message of the war generally, I think is enough to see the two mothers. And the Serbian mother, which says that these songs doesn't have an ending. This is what she said. What is my answer to the question, to the central question, who does manipulate us? And I will end by this. You have heard, those from you who are from Balkans, you have experience of hearing many, many stupid stories which sound weird. For example, let me tell you some of these stories. I have heard through my going all the Balkans. Well, I don't mention names of countries and places. A story about snakes, very typical red snakes thrown by American air, from American aircraft. They hide in the caves, and some of them go in the canalization through the particular, when you put your water, they drop in. These snakes are very, very special. They cannot intermingle with the local nature, but they're a very special biological weapon. And they make these snakes, they put it. Second stories. We have a secret weapon from Nikola Tesla time. And this secret weapon is called Ellipton. As soon as this weapon is there, all the aircraft will go down. But we are hiding this weapon. We don't want to put it right now to work because we have some other considerations and we think it's better for us to lose the war than to reveal our secret weapon. Second story. Third story. Our language, two professors speaking in a studio. Our language has been invented in old times by wizards. So the wizards and also very special ladies who do something with the wizards, they have devised our very special language. And the journalist, instead of kicking these professors out of the studio, he's asking the question, what did the mechanism the wizards use in order to create our language? This is a third story. I mean, such stories, I mean, I can publish a book with this kind of stories. You can say this is not a great conspiracy, but this is a plain stupidity. It's a plain stupidity, but this is a very special culture, the culture of great conspiracy. Of course, it's not born on the Balkans. Great conspiracy, of course, also comes from America with these stories about aliens coming, you know, abductions and all these things. So not every bad thing is born on the Balkans, but this is a particular mentality which goes up to the very last segment of society, trying to explain it. And this, you know, this kind of thinking, this kind of approach explains also media. They say media is perfectly controlled. If you see, for example, a program, you know, they have asked him to say this, you know, he has been asked to say this in the beginning, to say this in the end. They have crafted his persons, they have crafted his guests, they have crafted his reports. Everything has its intention. Everything is up to the last report. This is pre-planned and this is conspiracy. So let me tell you, if you can believe in conspiracy, you can believe. But I prefer to believe in stupidity, which is much more potent than conspiracy. Everything in the world is because of stupidity, error, and sin. But what we have really people who want to influence our work, who want to influence our content, people who create artificial parties, artificial sensations, things like that. But extremely, at the end, they cannot succeed. If a media is very dominated by some force or for some power, people would revolt, they won't see it. People are not stupid after all. But they can succeed in creating a noise, which is our power and our task to demask, to show and to put the rational questions to that. In other ways, to do what we do with our pictures, to put rationality to it, to put the rational questions to it, and to ask for it. Believe me, you may think now that technology provides all our answers to all our questions. But let me prove this point. Technology could be also a great problem if you want to deal with people who want to interfere in media content. There was something which was tried first of all in Brazil, but after that I saw it on the Bulgarian protests. You film somebody, you see people protesting against the government. You film somebody. Then you can look for his face and easily identify this person. Then you can Google or you can show his Facebook and see all his problems, what he has. Somebody has divorced, somebody is gay, somebody has a lover, somebody has taken money from... Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect because you post all your sins on Facebook, no? And then all your sins could be turned against you. There were some influenced, particularly targeted media influence in order to practically to ruin people just because they are protesting or for some other things by using modern technology. It is 2 clicks of Google, you can do it. Is that journalism? No, of course it's not. But here again is the role of the trained journalist. He is the one who has to ask questions. He is the one who has to protest. He is the one who has to demask and to rationalize this picture. He is the one who can stop this manipulation by his own. And here is the one who can take questions for himself or for herself and allow criticism and allow doubt on his own work. Ladies and gentlemen, let me put it simply in that way. We are in a much bigger world. Now, everybody can claim he's a journalist or she. For some of us who are older, we even see that they don't recognize our journalistic cards in museums anymore because everybody can say I'm a blogger and I have this card. My blog is influenced, so I can go for free in Madame Tussauds. So what they do in Madame Tussauds is not allow journalists to go for free. This is a metaphor which shows you how the profession of journalist has been devalued because of the great variety we have. I have counted recently in Sarajevo that if we had this journalism variety in '94, the city could not have hosted so many journalists. They could have gone elsewhere. I counted that. I was recently there. I thought, what if in '94 when I was there were 10 instead of 1 Bulgarian television alone? And there were 10 correspondents there alone from Bulgaria. Don't mind the bloggers. What do we do? Some of you here trained for journalists. What do we do in this complex world where everybody can claim he or she is a journalist? You can be the spoilers. You can be the ones who doubt. You can be the one who understand how bad pictures can be and how nice pictures could be. And you could be the one who can go to yourself and say, I'm a journalist because I don't trust even myself. This is it.
Thank you.
I didn't keep my first promise, sorry.
Neither did Harry VA. We'll open for questions. That's a question.
Maybe I could ask the first question.
Okay.
Mr. Vasiliev, do you prefer the battlefield or the studio?
If you mean by battlefield everything outside the studio, I prefer it. So the studio is something which I do, I don't like very much, and you have to believe me in that. Do you know why? For a purely egoistic reason. Who will allow you, if you are 24, 25, or 26, to edit your own movie and to put it on television? A treat which is reserved for Spielberg, you can do it now, for modest of resources. I think the editing, the lust for editing, the editing lust is the real television disease. This is really the disease which you are it's infectious. Not that somebody recognizes you on the street and says, oh, this is the guy. I mean, believe me, in Bulgaria, this is a problem because I have never ever set a public figure which is loved in Bulgaria, including the football players. They're especially hated. If you see a football player on the street, you won't go to ask for an autograph to him. You will go to explain him that you can score this goal better than him. So it's not a hypocrisy; it's the truth. I would, the greatest pleasure I have in journalism are my films and my reports. Please, any question? Yes?
Do you think the protest, the Bulgarian protest against the Syrian refugee camp, is related with any lack of information in the Bulgarian media? Or is there explanation for that reason?
Well, I think that we Bulgarian journalists, we are guilty for creating a very superficial and stupid society climate in Bulgaria. What do I mean by that? I can claim, because I know the Balkans, there is not a single country on the Balkans which has created such a superficial journalism scene. It's not that we are bad people. If we talk like that, we are okay. But when we get it together, here comes the problem. We negotiate, we think that the public pretends something superficial, something stupid. Yes, some of the public, maybe the majority of public, prefers something naked, and it's happy to have it. But there's a segment of society which we are not serving, and this segment is either emigrating to Discovery Channel or emigrating out of Bulgaria. And this is personal guilt of journalists, including me. In the case with Syrian refugees, there's something the problem here is doubled by the bad winds which blow in Europe right now. So I don't think they are especially bad in Bulgaria, but you see they are bad in England, they are bad in France, where a huge populist backlash is expected. They're also bad in Germany. A book was published there. Germany has the sense of decomposing and something. So I think we have some bad winds in Europe, and coinciding with this media scene in Bulgaria, we had the debacle of some media which were used to pump fear, or pumped fear by themselves, thinking that they raise their circulation, pumped fear against the Syrian refugees. What happened? Actually, the problem was solved and contained. Not because the media pumped fear, but because the state has organized and did something. And yes, do we have exodus of refugees like somebody predicted? No. Should the journalists be the ones who have really debated fair issues, fair exit out of that? Yes, they were the ones. Did they do it? No. And this is their smallest sin towards Bulgarian publicity, the smallest sin. We have much, much greater sins. But I think that our greatest sin is, and believe me, nobody is innocent here on that. Our greatest sin is that we did not resist its superficiality. Our newspapers are absolutely provincial. I mean, those of you who don't speak Bulgarian, you just need to take a newspaper and to look for the international news. Page 17, 18, after the naked woman. And but those who are not Bulgarian, you should know that this was one of the most open and unprovincial country and society on the Balkans as far. This is a place where the culture of people is to learn foreign languages at school. And we have did this to such an open, to such a really good society. This is a sin which is unforgivable. Unforgivable. You would ask me why. The question is simple. The pendulum went through the boring, very international coverage of communism to the very extreme, to the superficial coverage of the Wild West, where when a dog bites a man, this is a news. So this is where we went. No other country went to this extreme. You have a relatively serious segment in Greece, in Serbia, Bosnia, all a relatively, I'm saying again, a relatively serious and very potent segment on television and newspapers. Only Bulgaria said, okay, we'll do the extreme. And we did it, and that's the result.
I have a question.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you said that the most important guy when you're doing a report is the
Cameraman, yes?
right? So what do you think about this new concept of backpack journalists? Like the journalist who does the shooting, the editing, writes the article?
I know this. We train even our people like this now in our television. We have very smart courses for use smartphones, things like that. But do you know what? I won't do this personally. And I'll tell you why. Not only because the cameraman is a professional and it's very good, because the cameraman is a different person. For me, the beauty of television, besides of editing, is to discuss the thing with another person, to have a co-authorship. And by discussing this, you go on extreme lengths of understanding things. We, with my cameraman, we are working for more than 20 years, we have our language. For example, we say about somebody who is very good as a character in our report, he's true to he's true. In Bulgarian, I mean, it sounds weird even in Bulgarian that somebody could be true, but we say it, you know, I have great things with my camera. For example, he's standing beside the camera and he says, go on asking, because his eyes are great. I cannot see this immediately, but he sees that through the lens. We have discussed the truth with him or the other cameraman all the way through. And this is the thing I like. Maybe I'm a democratic person. Maybe I'm a very, let's say, not willing, somebody who has not a strong will. Maybe it's a problem of my character. But I like this. You know? I don't like these people who pretend that they are the alpha and the omega of things. And personally, I would not embrace that. But yes, we train our people. We train our people that. We train, I mean, in some situations, this is the only way to get it. For example, we were recently arrested by the Turkish authorities for going illegally to Syria. It was no way to go legally, of course, but we are on our way back. We were arrested because we didn't want to hide our camera, we didn't want to hide our equipment. Yeah, we are not ashamed that we are journalists. We just went to Syria last year. The year before, 2012, and when we're back, we were arrested. When I had only my smartphone, nobody would have arrested me. But this is the risk you can take. Yeah?
Have you been censored or threatened during your career?
Yes. Censored. I have been threatened, yes. several times. But censored, I have made compromises. I hope not big ones. I hope not big ones. Everybody does compromise, I have to admit. One of the compromises were not very good. The result was bad. Some of the compromises, they were okay. But I don't think we have the censorship we had 25 years ago now. We have a very different kind of, let's say, manipulation, interference, or censorship. It's not government versus the press. No, it's something much more profound. We have three types of interference. Businesses and networks. Not against the press, but using the press. We have very special kind of press here. The problem with Bulgarian press is not that it is censored, but because it flatters. Not because it is oppressed, but it wants to serve. This is the problem. So this is one kind of influence, interference. Readiness on the way of journalists to serve certain networks. I call it networks because it's not only businesses. A typical network includes a prosecutor, a potent journalist, a businessman. This is a typical network. So this is the first problem. Second kind of interference in Bulgaria is interference by your own bosses. I mean, of course, when you go to work in a newspaper or in a television, you have to obey your boss. But now, these days, I see readiness to serve which I have never expected that I have seen before. I mean, with this cynical motive, okay, it's business. It's not business. The greatest problems I have had in the years, let's say 10 or 12 years ago, was when I had such bosses. And I had to fight my own boss to serve my own public. And believe me, this is hard. Believe me, this is hard. The first thing is that I gain in weight. But this is the first thing. You lose many things in this battle and you cannot win it. You cannot win it in the end. But the third influence or interference is the most painful one. Interference like from your own. Dictation from the presumed part of the public which you think wants something superficial and naked. In Bulgaria, we call it the average Kyustendilian person. Kyustendil is a place in Bulgaria. First of all, when we gather in our circles, we say, would the average Kyustendilian understand that? And sometimes we say, no. I mean, we presume he or she is stupid. No, he won't understand that. But what's the truth? Umberto Eco in Bulgaria was received much better than Ceca Veličković 10 years ago. Ceca Veličković is a Serbian folk singer. Umberto Eco, you know. Presumably the average Kyustendilian preferred to hear Umberto Eco than to go to a concert to Ceca Veličković. I was struck by this fact when I noticed that when the public really wants to understand what you are doing, it's especially good on that. Paradoxically, I now want criticism. I want my public to watch carefully and to criticize me where the balance was one side, where the balance was the other side. Which side was there? Was that fair? Was that question fair? I want this. In the last 10 years, I didn't have it, but now I'm happy. Because people now doubt Bulgarian media, and they began to watch it very carefully. And believe me, every one of them has a point. And as soon as you make a very something which you think the people will not mention or will not pay attention, they will understand. And if you really carefully listen to her, you will see that average Kustendilian is a myth. And believe me, I have seen many people, but I not have ever seen an average person in my life. Even the most stupid person I have ever seen was not average by any way. He was or she was particularly interested in something, and even the stupidity, the stupidity was something which made him or her not very average. So if you think of your public as something which is average, you are very wrong. Nobody's average.
Have a question over there?
What is your opinion on the blogs type of mass media?
On which of blogs?
Yeah, on blogs.
Well, I like blogs. You call this unprofessional journalism, you know. But when you go to a surgeon to make a surgery, you don't look for unprofessional surgeon to do this surgery. So blogs are very good. And by seeing blogs have made journalism very, very, let's say, great favors. But the professional journalist is not obsolete just because the thing I have just said, no blogger is restricted by his own doubt or her own doubt. Quite the opposite. Blogs are vanity. Vanity vanity per se. Most of the mightiest among the bloggers are people so full of themselves. Because, they cannot see everything except themselves. Some mighty bloggers. But the journalist is a humble person. The journalist is the one who checks the facts, the one who doubts. And even if he or she has Jesus Christ in front of him or her, he should ask proofs about the resurrection. This is it. You cannot ask this from a blogger, and this is not the intention of the blogger. So I'm okay for blogs, but let's not mistake them with journalism.
Have a question over there?
Yeah, right here. Thank you very much for the talk. First of all, I come from Kosovo and I want to relate to your presentation.
Really? From which town?
Pristina, presumably. And the videos were very vivid to me and to all the Kosovo, I guess, bringing back memories to a time which ever since we've been trying to forget. My question has to do with the propaganda that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And some of the biggest issues of that time, as far as I can remember, is that the state that was controlling everything, the Serbian state, was constantly using propaganda as to the international news, so they couldn't get in and see what was really happening. So do you think that it is within the ethical responsibility of each journalist to put out the truth as it is and to not fall under pressure, even though many journalists were life threatened or were?
So let me be clear. If there's a war or liberation movement, everybody uses propaganda. Besides, sometimes we tend to call our own propaganda, the truth, and the enemy propaganda, the propaganda or lie. But I will answer your question very precisely. There's a Serbian myth, especially contrary to what you have said. There's a Serbian myth that Serbia has lost all the wars because of propaganda war against it. In Bosnia, there was a famous accusation of a kind of a public relations firm called Roger and Finn, who has been worked against the Serbian interest paid by whoever you may think, Albanian lobby in the States, or Bosnian lobby somewhere else, or from the merchants, or from the aliens. The truth is, Serbians, if there are Serbians here, they have to they have to know that their propaganda people betrayed them by being absolutely unprofessional.
Meaning what?
I mean, I will tell you exactly. I saw that in Sarajevo. Bosnian media center was made of the best and the brightest of the Bosnians. Serbian media center was made of the worst of the Serbian population. There were people demanding money there. I mean, I can tell you, for example, that boss of this person was the most weird person I know, the daughter of Karadzic, Sonja Karadzic. She was the boss of the media center. Nobody wanted to talk to her. She was, anyway, looking awful, staying on her place like that, without working anything. Next to her was a captain whom her father ordered to marry her. And she said to every request, she said no, no, no. And when it reached around 12 o'clock, this person, the captain, looked to her and said, and she said, press center closes for 30 minutes. So this was, I mean, I cannot, why was that so? I think this was because of some other reasons. Not intentionally, but I would have to say that the war propaganda of Serbians was very unprofessional in the beginning. This was, of course, not true in Kosovo. They had a media center there. There was the way for them to present their truth. They were much more professional than in Bosnia. But nevertheless, they thought that there was an anti-Serbian inertia in the world media. And instead of explaining its point, they claimed every international journalist is an enemy. But I have to tell you, there was also propaganda on your side. And believe me, all the propaganda trick, I mean, this is something we have to live with. This is a war. This is a liberation movement. These are press centers on both sides. And these press centers, which is interesting for our topic now, have very have absolutely different aims than in the 19th century. In the 19th century, the war propaganda was, we are the mightiest. We conquer, we kill. The war propaganda of the 21st century was, we're the weak, they kill us. This is because of mass media. This is because of 24 hours media. And this is very interesting. This is not a kind of evil intention. And even the Serbs resorted to this. Yeah?
So if you're saying that there was propaganda on both sides, and maybe both sides were faulty, are you in any way assuming that the NATO bombing is current state?
No. I don't see, I'm not talking about anything connected to fault or truth.
I mean for the war itself.
No, I think everybody, if you have a war, I knew the people from KLA, some of the people from KLA who were the press center. I don't think they were not decent people. I'm not talking who is right or who is wrong. I'm talking that everyone, if there's a war, on both sides you have people who do propaganda and who handle journalists. And these people are very important. As I explained just to you, part of the Serbian loss in the Bosnian war because these people were not very competent. And in some way funny. But if you have war, you will have propaganda on both sides, don't think. No, I don't. I'm not commenting on right or wrong. I'm commenting only on that propaganda. There is propaganda on both sides.
Okay, 2 more questions? Yes.
What would you say about the freedom of speech in surrounding countries? How would you judge it?
Freedom of speech has not. Freedom of speech now is tricky everywhere. or in all the surrounding countries, in Bulgaria particularly. What's the problem? Small media market. On small media market, you are tempted to build small outlets, media outlets, which do not profit and do not cover. They're your own stick. You use this stick to kill your opponents. Use this stick to kill somebody you don't like. And now there are people who said, where is the big, serious newspaper? I mean, how serious, how big? Let's think about Germany. Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung had recently 400,000 circulation, am I right? Probably, maybe it's smaller. Maybe smaller these days. 400,000. This is the circulation of the biggest tabloids in Bulgaria. Of course, Bild Zeitung has much more circulation. In Germany, in mighty Germany, the greatest economy of Europe, you have 400,000 people who support a newspaper, great revenue, great advertising market, and this newspaper is still viable. What shall we say of our countries? I had a great friend who joked about that, Arben Jaferi, a late politician, Albanian politician from Macedonia, a great friend of mine who was joking. He said, a country under 2 million he said that how can I translate this? A country under 2 million is not very, ne može da se isplati. A country which is under 2 million cannot pay itself back. So can you imagine a country under 2, there are several countries on the Balkans which are under 2 million. Can you imagine how potent, what kind of media market should you have to have a really independent and good newspaper? And of course, many of these newspapers and many of these televisions are not free because they cannot afford it. But where is the answer? There is answer. There should be optimism. First of all, on the west of us, this is a great optimism because there's a unique market, a unified market. A Croatian can understand Serbian. Serbian can understand Bosnian. Macedonians can understand them, both. So if you have a very good newspaper, like the Croatian Federal Tribune was during the war, very good newspaper, you have potential audience of 20 million who can understand and who can read it. This is very good. Croatian television is very well seen in Serbia, also in Macedonia, in Bosnia as well. One of the first places. And Croatia is 4 million, but it's aiming for a market of 20. So this is, on the west of us, saving the day. Poor Bulgarians, nobody understands their language. Even Macedonians say they don't understand it. Where should we sell our outlets? To our own audience, to Bulgarians abroad, and to those Macedonians who can understand it. It's not very big, huge audience. So here, I think it's very important that society makes their own choice if they see a good media to support it. There is no other way. Society should support the media they like. For example, here in Bulgaria we have a very interesting phenomenon. Everybody is against bad media. They say this media is bad, this media is bad. But when they're invited to go to this media with their public intellectuals, they go. They go, they don't mind. If they're asked for an interview from this media, they don't mind. They give interviews. If they, for example, if this media pays them some, runs some of their scripts or something, they don't mind. If we have this, we deserve this.
Okay, one question? No? Over there? Last question? Yes, go.
So
May 12th last year, you remember the incident in Kostenbrod?
Yes.
Around 300,000
Yes.
went to the store. And like the day afterwards was the day of silence.
Yes. No, it was the day of silence.
Yeah, it was a day of silence, and the media wasn't supposed to report on anything political. It
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to be political propaganda, and they did. Every channel except BNT, I believe. Do you think it was a journalistic mistake to report on that day because there wasn't enough research done to know who was responsible? Yet they did, and this did affect voting.
We also did report. It's a very good question. And it's a very good question. Still we don't know the truth about Kostenbrod. Still we don't know the truth. I have asked several programs again, the Prosecutor General about that. Well, the problem is that one of the media went hysterically first, and what we did was not to follow the hysterical tone, but to try to bring some truth and both sides to that. But the damage was done. And it shows how media could be used and misused. It's not a conspiracy again. It's not a conspiracy. It's a simple trick. It's a simple trick. If you have somebody to start that, others should have followed. Believe me, I was at that time head of news. I'm not anymore. But at that time I was. And I was with the head of news of all 2 other big televisions. We were on some press conference. 1 hour before that, we didn't know anything. So the sheer fact that the 3 mighty newsrooms did not know anything, and 1 television know everything, was absolutely, absolutely suspicious. But this is it. You cannot do anything for a small, short period of time. And now, what can you claim? You can claim Kostenbrod changed the election. You can claim Kostenbrod did not change the election. But the suspicion remains. So, exactly for that, you need responsible journalists. But Bulgaria was lacking them at that moment.
Okay. On that note,
One.
you want to take one more?
Okay, I have 2, but I'll ask just one.
One short one.
Yeah. Okay. The topic is conspiracy. So
Yeah.
according to you, in the current situation in Bulgaria, what is the biggest conspiracy?
No, the topic is, I'm against conspiracy. What I'm claiming is that conspiracy cannot exist. There are influences, interferences, use and misuse of media. I don't think, this is a very interesting question. Let me explain it a little bit. Manipulation is absolutely not possible because you cannot control the reaction of the public to what you do. What do I mean by that? Let me, for example, think that, let us imagine an imaginative, absolute successful conspiracy of a television which works 100% for the government. They start with the government, they end with the government, they show only the government, something like Milosevic television was at some time, you know. There were some kind of televisions on the Balkans like that. Do you think this television would make the government lovable? No. This television will make people joke on it, not watch it. Look for other sources. There was a slogan of the Serbian opposition in the 90s, Zatvorite televizor, otvorite oči. Close the television, close the TV set, open your eyes. There were one of the first moves of Solidarność in Poland in the 80s was everybody, when the news bulletin started, everybody went out on the street. You know this? Maybe you don't. Everybody knew that the news bulletin is lying, so everybody went to the streets. And the streets of Warsaw were packed with people. You cannot go anywhere. People just going like that, you know. But they show that they are out there not watching the news bulletin. Let's imagine a simple example. Let me think I go to television and to try to pretend I'm smart. Like to pretend that I'm something which I'm not. What will the result be? I won't look smart. I will look weird. I will look funny. I will look stupid. We cannot control the media 100%. This is what my topic was about Great Conspiracy on the Balkans. You have to know, because many people will say to you, you're paid, you're organized, you're controlled. Somebody told you to say this, somebody told you to say this, somebody told you to wink, somebody told you to, to silence, somebody told you to open your mind. It's not possible. Even if you try it, you will fail. You cannot control the media 100%. Nobody can control the media. The media, the problems of media are the problems of the journalists themselves and their inability to cope with their task. You cannot control them, even if you want on 100%. People will recognize this and they would revolt. Media manipulation, great conspiracy in media is impossible. It doesn't exist. It's a sorcery. It's a sorcery. Everything is our own stupidity and our own errors. This is it.
And on that note, let's thank the speaker, and let's hope it won't last 6 years till the next visit.
Oh, well, I'm not sure I will live to that. Sure.
This program is brought to you by AUBG Talks. For more, please visit us at aubg.edu/talks.